All right, well, I think it's time to get started. We're a few minutes past the hour, and I think we've got most of our participants logged in. So I'd like to welcome all of our attendees today. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're not familiar with us, we're Goodway. We're a strategic media and analytics partner to over 75 agencies across the United States. We've actually been providing marketing services for 95 years now, since our founding as a privately owned family company. So today we offer sophisticated end-to-end digital media capabilities, all the way from strategy and planning to media activation to measurement and analytics. So you heard a little bit of our banter, you know what our favorite Halloween costumes are, but I just want to let you know that I'm joined by Todd Hosfeld and John Monroe today. By way of intro, Todd heads up our client experience practice and leads some of our largest engagements. Todd is actually an agency veteran himself and very well understands the challenge of driving results for brands through constant innovation. John joins us from business development and is very well attuned to the constantly changing and complicated ecosystem of ad tech and martech, having joined us with experience from both the Trade Desk and Viant. And I'm Amy Kraus. I manage and lead our managed service practice here at Goodway. I wear many hats that I won't belabor, but today I get to play panel moderator and podcaster wannabe on this Halloween. So we're going to do this. The format here is going to be very much like a panel discussion. We're going to be just tackling some topics that we think are relevant for agencies today. And, as you all signed up for this, really what we're diving into is how competitive the landscape has become and acknowledging the challenge that agencies are facing tighter client budgets and higher expectations to drive outcomes for their clients. So our conversation today is designed to provide you with insights and hopefully some actionable tips that will help you meet those challenges that you face. Hopefully you'll walk away with some practical knowledge on how to manage clients' media more effectively, specifically, how to deliver superior results and to drive growth. And throughout, we're open. We have the chat open. We have some Q&A capabilities here that you'll be able to go ahead and enter into. And then we definitely have some time carved out at the end to go into some of those questions and give some answers. So before we dive in, we have a little crowdsourcing to do. We have a Mentimeter, which is something that you can go ahead and there's a link in the chat that you can click on and scan the QR code. And the question that we wanted to put out to our audience today, just to get some thoughts started, is what challenges does your agency face in providing value through media? So we'll give it a couple minutes for you all to go ahead and share some of your thoughts with us.
We need some background music.
A little elevator music.
Halloween music, maybe.
Spooky music.
All right, we have some answers coming in.
Yep.
Transparency, budgets, niche audiences, high CPMs. Okay.
Yep.
OTT attribution. That's a good one. I like that.
Yep. Transparency. Big in the industry.
That is a big one.
Yep. ROI is one of our favorite topics. How do we continue to show that and deliver that?
We're going to touch on quite a few of these. So this is
great.
Good. Yep. Reporting, transparency, and measurement are to be the top.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, yes, as John said, these are topics that are very near and dear to our hearts, and definitely as we go through this, I think we'll touch on all of those. So let's go ahead and kick this off. I'm going to be moderating today, and we're going to be hearing from all of us, John and Todd and myself. But I think one of the things that we wanted to just kick this off with is recognizing the challenge that we all face in delivering ROI, measuring outcomes. And also just acknowledging that, here we are at the end of October in the throes, most likely, of 2025 planning for our clients. And likely a lot of us are being asked to deliver more with less. So the first question I wanted to throw your way, Todd, is, media planning and buying is our bread and butter. What are your thoughts on how advanced digital media planning and buying enables agencies to create and deliver more value for their clients?
Yeah, great question. I think, honestly, if you look at the landscape that the agency landscape that we live in, it's really crowded. We know that a lot of our clients and brands we work with, I mean, they may work with a number of agencies on a single campaign, right? You know, one agency on attribution and measurement, maybe another one specific to like strategy, content marketing, yet another agency maybe around like creative and audience journey mapping and so on. So, you know, one reason why I think our clients like working with us is that, yes, media buying and planning is our bread and butter. But we also utilize a lot of research tools to develop audience design. We work side by side with our agencies when it comes to really helping influence and guide strategy, as well as, you know, building out, you know, effective measurement frameworks. So I think for an agency, especially in the digital media realm, to provide value to clients, they need to look beyond the typical playbook, you know, those typical strategies, tools, levers that have been used for quite some time. There's so much at our fingertips these days. You need to know what to use and when to use it and when to apply it, you know, to ensure that the media really is keeping at a sophisticated level, especially with all the changes that are happening in today's environment. So, you know, I think to build on that, I'd say it's important we use, you know, things like data-driven decision-making that really can help with improve audience targeting, real-time optimization, I'd say advanced measurement. You know, we got a lot of buzz around media mix modeling, scenario planning, but these are the things that I think do really help kind of objectively inform our strategy and our plan. So I'd say one of the best advice we give, you know, our agency partners is to work and collaborate with fewer but high quality media partners, you know, given that how far these budgets and how thin they can spread, we really need to keep your options around who you're working with to a minimum and keep that focused. So,
yeah, I think, you know, in the Mentimeter, measurement and results and ROI came up pretty prominently. And I agree with everything you just said in terms of how we can, you know, deliver results. Can you speak to some of the results that you've seen with some of the agencies that you've worked with? We have an internal joke. I probably shouldn't say this, but sometimes we say, you know, media receipts is not enough. That's not going to show, you know, outcomes. That's not going to deliver results. So would love to just hear some of, you know, what you've seen in terms of how better buying techniques and planning have actually delivered outcomes.
yeah, I mean, I'd start with, you know, look, we know that media buying, you know, it's evolved a lot over the years. And especially now where it's, you know, heavily influenced by, you know, in-platform DSP optimizations powered by, big surprise, you know, AI, as we know. So, you know, even though there's a lot of, you know, artificial, I'm always afraid to do my air quotes as balloons are going to start going up. So I don't think that happened here, but you know, there's clearly an artificial component to the media buying side of things, but there's also a human powered side of it, right? Human powered insights that's not going to go away, but since it's all constantly evolving, we need to stay on top of it, both at the AI and the human level. So I think from an example standpoint, you know, I would say, you know, example might be like we're currently running a holistic CTV OTT campaign for one of our agency partners for their client in the insurance vertical. And we're seeing some really positive results based on kind of providing a more sophisticated plan. We're seeing higher conversion rates, you know, reduced acquisition cost, and yes, like we talked earlier, you know, increased ROI. So, you know, when I say holistic, you know, I mean that we're able to cut out a lot of the noise and manage more so at the household or user level, both when it comes to reach and frequency at the campaign level with our chosen DSP. So, you know, what's important is that we avoid a lot of wasted impressions and only serve impressions to users who are showing intent, which I think is really important. So we're able to get a lot more focused, as well as that users are showing that they're actively interacting with the brand's website. We know walled gardens aren't going away, you know, but we are able to pinpoint key trends, like for example, like with Amazon Prime Video, and then compare that to what we're running on Peacock to understand, you know, audience behavior even better. It's a better drive those better outcomes. We're looking at a lot of data points, right? As we're doing reporting and measurement, you know, conversions, leads, traffic to site, things of that sort. And then we're coupling that with, you know, a brand lift study that parallels the campaign, competitive reviews, things like that ultimately are going to help make better and more informed real-time recommendations. So We use a lot of data buying strategy to remove a lot of that background noise, like I was saying, that buying fragmentation, and allows us to really zoom in to create that positive momentum that we need. So, and frankly, not to mention, I mean, if you can add in, and if you have CRM data that you can tap into, we can ingest that into our campaigns too, to make things a little bit more personalized and more specific based on the audiences that we're trying to target. So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot of great points there. And just to double click on the the planning topic before we move forward from planning, I think one thing that I've seen a lot of agencies do, a lot of successful agencies that are trying to harness data for the planning side of the campaign. I think some of the best things that you can do is to, if you have the ability to, drop a pixel as soon as possible, right? The best time to place a pixel is yesterday. That's like the cardinal saying around pixel data. And I think a lot of brands sometimes try to rush into the campaign where they will kind of, brands and agencies, sometimes, you have to get it live quickly. I understand that there's quick turnaround times, but try to capture that data as soon as possible. If you don't have the CRM data, and if you do have something like CRM data, you can combine that with pixel data if you're able to kind of, also drop a pixel on a site to check traffic to a site. Because sometimes you'll find that the pixel traffic is different from the CRM data. So for some reason, your brand or the brand could be skewing highly towards an audience that you may not have necessarily realized they would skew highly towards, right? And the pixel data will tell you that. And then dropping that data into a planning tool, whether it's through a partner, like a good way where we can kind of help you model that data with our tools. Or if you're, going self-service on something like the Trade Desk, you can drop it into the Trade Desk planning tool, and then it will analyze that data, model that data, provide outputs on that data to help guide you in how to build your campaign, how to actually put, pen to paper and build the campaign out. So I think that's one thing that I would mention as a tip.
I love that, John. In fact, as recently as last week, oftentimes when we're working with an agency and creating like launch plans for client campaigns, we actually have that's the pre-launch step, right? Like
Right.
Pixel. Before we even talk about launching, let's talk about what we
Right.
can do right now. And I think for agencies, that's something you can even advise to your clients if you haven't even won the business yet, to demonstrate smart thinking as a potential partner. So on the topic of new business, again, Todd, in the trenches, obviously, partnering with a number of our agencies, and you too, John, but what are some of the biggest gaps or areas that you see agencies needing help with when they're in pursuit of new business?
Sure. Yeah. We really pride ourselves on dimensionalizing our partnerships with our agency partners. Obviously, we're here to, be their media strategy planning partner, but a lot of times we'll steer the conversation towards growth, right? So we have, monthly meetings, monthly conversations, sometimes quarterly, with our agency partners around how can we help with any gaps or outages they have with respect to the pursuit of new business and growing. So, one question we ask our agency partners a lot is, what are those 2 to 3 capabilities that you wish you had, that you don't have, that you think could help you win and certainly win business over your competition? And it's such a great open-ended question to the point that it really guides the conversation. It really makes them think, you're right, there are some things that were outages, but if we can fill those outages and those gaps, we have the right to go pursue opportunities that we might not otherwise want to or have the opportunity to. Second, we've hit on this already a little bit, just the ever-changing landscape of the digital media world. I think, just adaptability, right? Like, so agencies being able to kind of adapt and bring in new capabilities and new technologies. Sometimes those come, at a high cost or, additional resourcing, and that can be a heavy load on an agency. So, where you can find that managed services partner or someone can come in and help fill those gaps as well. It's something I think a good way we're constantly and always trying to find, new technologies, new strategies, new products that we can develop, all for the good of trying to make campaigns more effective. I'm sure we'll hit on this one a lot on the call today as well, but just being able to more effectively utilize data. I think, just agencies working with clients, they may be sitting on a goldmine of data that they just simply don't know, or it's just untapped. So how can you better utilize the data? And I'd say probably the last one is more so around, just maybe a lacking of strong vertical expertise. So, within agencies, a lot of agencies, they're very good within the swim lanes they work within. But, often to grow revenue, right, you got to look beyond the verticals or the swim lanes you work in. And whether that's an adjacent vertical or a vertical that where there's either a lot of dollars flowing or just trend wise, there's a lot of more attention that the market's putting on that particular vertical. If that's somewhere where you don't have experience, but yet you want to go play, again, opportunity to work with like a managed services partner that maybe does have that breadth of experience across, breadth of verticals, that gives you that right to play. So those are the four key areas that tend to come up pretty frequently as we're having conversations and or just kind of assessing where there's opportunity areas with the agency.
Yeah, I think we've all, being agency and partner veterans, career, lifers here, I think we've all experienced that oh no moment when that big juicy prospect comes, to the front door and you're like, well, I guess we have to learn a whole new vertical now. And
Yeah,
or
very,
find
it
some
can be
people in the
very
organization that know it.
agreed. Yeah. I mean, very daunting. It's like, oh, we got this RFP. RFPs themselves, we know, are not without the immense amount of investment and time to put into them to give yourself a puncher's chance of winning. But if it's a vertical that you just are so wanting to get into, but maybe just don't have that level of expertise, and you can up your game overnight, that's such rocket fuel to a new business approach. It can be really exciting.
It can be exciting and it can be very difficult. And I think there are some verticals that are probably a little bit harder to wrap your heads around in that scenario than others. John, you're in business development. You've probably had experience with almost every vertical or category out there. What are
Yeah.
some that you think you've seen, agencies struggle with more than others?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there are certain verticals, as you mentioned, that are certainly more challenging than others, and I think it tends to evolve or revolve around verticals that are highly regulated is really where we see the biggest walls and challenges, because just being cognizant of regulations and making sure that your digital media is compliant with those regulations can be tricky. The two biggest verticals that are, I think, obvious in everybody's mind are healthcare and FinServ, or just the financial sector in general. In healthcare, you have to worry about HIPAA regulations. You have to be very careful with PII. You have to be very careful with the way that you target. Whether you place a pixel on a page that is condition specific. There's a lot of things that you can't do in healthcare. So what that leaves you with is, one, you have to understand what you can and can't do. And then you also have to make sure that you're taking advantage of what you can do, because you are limited. So, the obvious thing I'm just going to use healthcare as an example here. A lot of brands and agencies gravitate towards contextual targeting in healthcare, because it's not, you don't have to worry about the segment being necessarily compliant when you're going out and targeting, because you're just targeting general inventory that's related to the topic. But there are ways to do more advanced levels of targeting on that, so you don't just have to limit yourself to contextual targeting. There are ways around that, and you still can place a pixel. You just need to know which pages you can place a pixel on. So I think partnering with a partner who does have vertical expertise or building out a team internally is the best thing to do. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but you have to kind of have the vision for your agency and where you want to invest. And if you want to invest in a team to be verticalized and specialize in certain verticals, that's great. Go for it. And you can certainly probably get up to speed and have a great team to do that. But if not, you can work with a managed service partner and go to a partner that does already have those teams built out, and let them leverage what they've already built for the benefit of your business. So that is one way that I think about it. And then another area outside of verticals that I see sometimes agencies have gaps in and they're trying to solve for quickly is specific channels. So things as they pop up, like retail media is ever evolving and moving pretty quickly. Even CTV and digital out of home, sometimes those channels, I still see agencies buy those channels in fragmented silos because they have a vendor they have a rep at Hulu Direct who they like to work with. And that's fine. There are use cases where you might want to do that sometimes, but for the most part, it makes sense to consolidate in an independent DSP so you can frequency cap across multiple channels. You can do attribution. We saw CTV, I think it was OTT attribution that came up on the Mentimeter. Knowing that CTV in itself now today is really more so thought of as a performance channel. Yes, you can raise awareness, but it functions as a performance channel today. And that's something that I think a lot of, I was just at ANA Masters last week, and NBCU was on stage talking about this, about how CTV is really evolving with the amount of data that we have passing back and forth. It's a performance channel now. So things like that, I think, are important to take advantage of. And I see agencies evolving and kind of going in that way, but it can lead to some gaps.
Definitely. Yeah, I think one of the gaps Todd mentioned earlier was around data and being able to, kind of like assess everything that's out there and how do we actually deploy, data-driven targeting to amplify media effectiveness. Any thoughts on how agencies should think about that, John?
Yeah, that's a good question, and there's so much there because data is really so so vast today. I mean, we use the term data. It's data is everywhere. What does that mean? And all data is different, and everyone claims to have unique data. So yeah, how as a marketer are we really supposed to go out there and sift through the good data from the bad data and understand how to use it? But first and foremost, I think that data really is vital to your campaign. You don't want to start a campaign with no data. I think the best way to start a campaign is with a data first approach, and then making sure you're using the right data and then using those data signals to the fullest of your potential. And I think a lot of times this can be a test and learn approach because you're going to have a lot of different data. You're going to have, pixel data, you're going to have CRM data, you're going to have second party data. Maybe you might have, a Reds feed, which I'll talk about in a second, like log level impression data. And then you might leverage third party data segments. And it's not always obvious which can be the best to use and when. So it's just important to analyze this data and also analyze your post campaign data as you're testing new segments or new strategies in your campaign, and just making sure you're then beginning your campaigns with quality data. But a lot of times brands like to use feedback data, and this is something I see more advanced brands do. But brands and agencies, the more advanced ones, will use this data, feedback data, log level data that is called Reds data, which is the relevant data stream from your DSP. And if you work with a good DSP, and this is something that I will harp on, you should work with a good independent DSP. There are good and not so good DSPs out there, but making sure you're working with a DSP that's willing to pass you this sort of log level data is important. You want we talked about transparency. Some DSPs are very black box, and we have our preferred DSP, which is the trade desk that we work with, and they will pass us very, very transparent data, and we connect to them, via the API, so we can pretty much capture everything. But using things like Reds data, for example, to maximize your working media, if you use it correctly, is really important because it can allow you to, with the right data science team, if you want to build out a data science team internally, to eliminate things like ad waste, inefficient supply, duplicative impressions. It really allows you to get super granular in real time with your buy, and you can even go as advanced as informing something like a multi-vector bidding strategy if you'd like. So I think those are all really impactful ways to use data.
Awesome. So if anyone wants to learn more about a multi-vector bidding strategy, I'm going to put John's
We
cell phone number here at the end.
we can dive into it real quick if you want.
Yeah.
We can do a quick overview.
We got a little bit more
Okay.
content, some Q&A. Maybe we'll circle
Okay.
back. We can put that in the chat if they want us
Sounds
to.
good.
Um, no, but you make some great points, John, about, picking the right partner, picking the right DSP. Now we know that there are plenty of agencies out there that go direct to platform versus working through a partner like a Goodway. But
Right.
I think there's also the challenge of how do you balance, the investment that you make in working direct with a DSP with,
Right.
with returns, and there's an expense to getting that all set up. So, do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts, best practices on how an agency should think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of these platforms, when you go direct, I mean, there is super high minimums. It's usually around $100,000 a month, depending on the platform. But all of the tier one DSPs that you should be running your media on, no matter what size your agency is, they have pretty high minimums because that's just kind of the nature of their business. Because all the big brands work with them, and they do high contract volumes, but they do that because they are the best DSPs. And that's if Procter and Gamble trades with the trade desk, you should probably consider it too, right? That's kind of how I look at it. But I think when you look at if you should have that relationship, you have to ask yourself, one, can you meet those minimums? And if you can't, that's fine. But then you should look for a quality managed service partner to access one of those those preferred independent DSPs in a different path if you can.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that's cool about what Goodway has done in our partnership with the Trade Desk is, there's plenty of, AI built into a lot of these platforms and machine learning and automation. And then, we also have our proprietary algorithms that sit on top of the
Right.
platform. So, I think that's just, I don't know if this is a question or a comment more, but, when AI is such a hot topic right now and everybody wants to figure out how do they leverage AI in their workflow. But it's
Yeah.
actually, there's a lot to be done, and that's definitely something Goodway is looking at, but there's a
Yep.
lot of it already in place via some of the best in class tools out there.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's tons of tools out there, and these DSPs have AI baked in. I think again, I'm going to mention the trade desk again because they just do it so well. But their Koa, AI engine in the platform is able to do pretty advanced bid factoring in the platform on behalf of you on an automated way to just make sure you're serving on relevant inventory. So it's something that's already embedded in a lot of these platforms, and at an accelerating rate, it's going to get better, and it is getting better.
Definitely.
And I'll lastly say on that, I think a lot of times we talk about what's the purpose and point of AI, and I think the purpose and the way to think about AI in these DSPs is not to replace your traders. I think some DSPs are going to market and saying, "Hey, we're going to replace the trader," and I don't think that's the way to think of it. I think not yet. I think the best way to do it is really use it to free your traders up to focus on more advanced trading strategies and to better inform the AI and better partner with the AI rather than to replace your trader. You want your trader to be not troubleshooting in the platform all day and more so thinking about how am I going to structure the next campaign, or what seed data am I going to use to inform the next campaign, and then help structure it and then let the AI kind of do this micro optimizations in the platform.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, there's this whole idea of like, how do you leverage that time better, and how do you identify audiences better, and how do you create more personalized, one-to-one connections through your media buys. So, again, it comes back to like this whole idea of, between AI and choosing the right partner and making sure that you have the right targeting and personalization strategies set up. How do we make every dollar work harder and smarter? I think that's kind of like the holy grail for agencies, especially those that are offering media capabilities.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you have to, it definitely comes down to that data first buying approach where you take the best data you can, use it in the beginning of your campaign, model off it, run your campaign from there. So you're not having a large amount of ad waste. Make sure that you're targeting the right folks. And I wouldn't focus as much on where you're reaching people. I would more focus on who you're reaching. And that's kind of what data can inform as we have more of a data driven, buying process. Obviously you want to weed out bad inventory. And I definitely agree with that. But your targeting data is more important because chances are, you're not running open market for display or OLV. You're going to have a data segment applied. So no matter what inventory you're serving on, as long as it's, not fraudulent inventory, you shouldn't really be worried about that. You should be worried about who you're reaching and then what the outcome of that impression was. And this is another reason why it's important to partner with a good independent DSP, because a lot of the walled gardens out there will just offer you cheap reach. And a lot of times people come to me and, they talk about, I'm getting a cheaper CPM on this platform, or I'm worried about my Google suite matching up to, CM 360 or, whatever it might be that they're using as their source of truth. And that's not always the best area to focus. I think the best area to focus is on, your actual outcomes of your campaign. Don't focus on cheap CPMs and matching up with your source of truth that is a Google Suite product, because it's not going to match up to your independent DSP, and it's really just forcing you into using DV360, which has cheap reach.
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
CPMs did come up earlier.
Yeah.
You said something right there that struck a chord with me. People come to you, so they seek. Obviously you talk to a lot of prospects out there, but I think internally too, you're a great resource just to all of us and
Thank
here
you.
in a good way. um,
Thank you.
and I just have to ask, because it is such a complex, ever-changing industry, how do you stay up to speed, and how can agencies stay on pace with all of this, evolving technology and new tools and things that are coming out every single day, it seems?
It's incredibly difficult. I'd be a fool not to acknowledge that, because I feel like I'm struggling to keep up all the time. But there are some really good ways to stay up to speed on industry, trends. And obviously the obvious one is reading industry publications. A really good blog that I like is The Current. It's independent. It was founded by the trade desk, but it's an independent blog. It's very, it's pretty non-biased. And then also getting out, going to industry conferences is a great way to kind of, see what new vendors are offering. I also am always willing to take calls with other vendors. I love, whether or not it's going to turn into a business relationship or not is not as important as, I get out of the call, what they're doing in their business and what might be new and innovative. So you see pretty innovative things come on the market. You like Chalice custom algorithms, for example, is like a very interesting multi-vector bidding strategy that kind of gets layered on top of the trade desk's API or any DSP's API, which is very interesting, similar to kind of what we do, how we partner with the trade desk and put our algorithms on top of their APIs as we're executing in the DSP. But yeah, just being out there in the industry, I think, is a really good way to stay relevant. And I get a lot of information as I chat with agencies and problem solve. Every agency, as I meet with multiple clients in high volumes, I'll see different problems in different ways, and then I have to. It's kind of my duty or what I, hold myself to help them solve that. And I learn a lot by doing that, but that's probably more of a personal way that I stay relevant.
And
I wrote
I would
down
say,
the current.
Amy, I think on this topic related to, existing agency partnerships, as a good managed services partner, we should be constantly bringing, the next shiny object, the next,
Right.
the industry is changing constantly, highly technical. There's just a lot to keep up with. So, leaning on a managed services partner to be able to bring that knowledge share on a consistent basis, explaining it in a way that in applicable terms, if you will, I think is important as well. And then obviously infusing these different aspects into, ever evolving strategies and plans that we're putting in place. So that knowledge share, just that constant, it's never a set it and forget it situation.
Yeah.
Todd, I think that's a great point. You made me kind of think about how, I think of us almost as a manager of platforms for our agency partners when we work in that functionality with agencies. I mean, we can be that sophisticated super user on the platform and the manager of the platforms for you that is picking and choosing the best platform in the space for the specific task, whether it be a DSP or whether it be social or whether it be, buying Amazon premium inventory through a separate pipe. I think that is really important to have a partner that's helping you pick which platforms are best.
Totally agree. I think that's where like trust and transparency are almost interchangeable, right? When we think about what the client's expectations are of agencies in that working relationship. So I mean, in how can agencies work to better establish, trust between them and their clients, especially when we're getting into these very, complicated, sophisticated buying practices?
Yeah, I think, establishing trust kind of when I think of trust, I really think of transparency and I think of, working with a partner who, as I mentioned before, certain DSPs will pass you completely transparent, log level data. So I think if you are able to capture that data in a transparent way and analyze it and feel good about what's coming through your clients, then you're not surprised when it comes to like your QBR meeting and you have to go chat with your client about what's been happening and you go ask for a site list report and it's all atmosphere TV or something like that. Like it's definitely comes down to transparency and feeling, keeping an eye on what you're buying as you're buying it. And then you'll feel good about when you go back to your clients and say, hey, we served 80% of our impressions on, premium CTV. And the client should feel good about that as well.
Yeah, and I'd add to that on the topic of trust, kind of building on transparency, we kind of go hand in hand, but just compliance, right? Responsible, use of data and being very transparent in how it is being used and certainly not being used. I think a good way we pride ourselves, especially in more regulated industries, taking a much more conservative approach to how we're handling data, what data we're using, what data we're not using, and why, and certainly working to build mechanisms to utilize what we do have to the best of our abilities, but just being responsible in the areas where, whether it's PHI or whatever the case may be, very, very cognizant of that.
Mhm. So I know we're at, let's see, we're at 36 minutes. We want to make sure we set up time for Q&A here at the end, but I do have a kind of a closing comment question to get your guys' thoughts on. We touched upon, we know all agencies are kind of in different stages of maturity and some are building capabilities in-house. Maybe they already have capabilities in-house. Some might be looking to outsource to a partner or maybe even pursuing like a hybrid approach. I guess, do you guys have any thoughts on how an agency should kind of think about that and where they want to go, what makes sense for them? Are there tips that you have to kind of contextualize that decision?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Want me to kick it off, Todd?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, start out, Tom.
Sure. I think I see this a lot with agencies where they start out, they grow, and then they start to grow more quickly, which is great. But then trying to determine which path to take, and there's oftentimes a fork in the road of kind of how to develop and evolve the agency over time. And I think it's important to really develop the long-term vision of the agency and understand, ask yourself, where do you want to specialize as you grow? Because I think as with limited personnel, you're going to have to specialize somewhere as you grow. And I think you have to ask yourself if you want to be more of a performance and media analytics, house where you're doing performance media, and you may want to in-house something like your DSP buying over time, and that would make sense if you want to specialize towards the performance side of things. But if the answer is more so you want to be focused on brand building, brand strategy, creative things like that, the media execution piece, it might make sense to outsource that at that point and look to a partner to help you out with that. So I think it really comes down to, do you want to be more of a data science performance agency, or do you want to be more so of a brand building creative agency?
Yeah, and I would just simply add, as an agency, what are you willing to invest when it comes to the time, money, people, capital, obviously, to expand your capabilities? If you have big aspirations, it's going to be an extremely heavy lift, and if you don't have the means to reach that goal, then you might need to get creative as far as where you're looking to expand those capabilities. So I think investment's a really big question that needs to be considered when you're looking to expand and grow.
That's great. Great. All right. Well, that concludes our podcast portion of the webinar this morning. Hopefully everybody got a few nuggets to take away from our discussion. So I'm just going to pop over to the Q&A now, and we can open this up. All right. So we had a question. I don't know if I'm supposed to say the name, but I'm not going to. Okay. So somebody asked, my agency is on the smaller side and struggles with showcasing the value of having team members who historically have been self-service buyers while making the shift to managed service. Would love to hear insight around successful strategies you've seen among other clients to balance that agency side buying time with a managed service partner.
Jan, you want to start on that one?
Yeah, so historically have been self-service buyers while making the shift to managed service. So are they saying the agency is shifting more to a managed service buying? Is that kind of and having people on staff who are more, akin and used to self-service buying? Is that how y'all read it?
That's how I read it, John.
Okay, that's what I was. Yeah, so I think it can really, those two can marry really well together. I think when you have someone who is a self-service buyer and has experience in a DSP, depending on which DSP it is and how many DSPs can be a different question, but I think it's always beneficial to have that person manage a managed service buying relationship because they know the right questions to ask, they know how to think about it, they know how to help. You can kind of co-plan a lot of managed service partners in good ways. Specifically, when I partner with agencies, it's a very collaborative, it's not just like throwing an IO over the fence and then we just go buy it. It's very collaborative in terms of how we build the actual strategy, and you can be as hands-on as you want or hands-off as you want. So I think using folks who know their way around the technical side of buying can be extremely helpful.
Yeah, and I would add in the context of just managed services, just on that topic alone, I think it's really important that a managed service partner is flexible. They're as good at listening to understand what the problems are as they are coming in with solutions. So, having that level of flexibility to adapt to what that particular client is needing, or that agency partner, if you're in the managed services space, is really important as well.
Okay. Another question that we have is, what excites you for 2025? I assume this means in digital marketing, but just kidding.
Right. Well, you want to go first, Todd?
I think just I think it's something that's probably just always continual, but I think we're going to really hit it in 2025, and that is just the ever evolving thus effects of technology. I mean, if you tons of obviously discussion around AI, but if you look at like where AI is going and trending, the high likelihood that it's going to take over search over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, it's pretty incredible. And I think that the adoption of AI and how it's being used with its multitude of tentacles, whether it be in media, marketing, things like that, I think as long as it's used for good, I'll add that. I think it's a very powerful tool, and I'm excited to see how it's going to evolve and really impact companies' bottom lines in 2025.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I for me, I agree with you. I'm excited about the advancements in technology, and I think AI is already heading into search quite a bit. I just hate when it gives me wrong answers. That's always frustrating. I don't know if anyone's noticed that, but sometimes you just get something that's completely false when you ask AI a question. Anyway, I think what I'm most excited about is the shift from traditional media into digital channels to continue to accelerate, which I think, hopefully benefits all of us on this call and is something that, has excited me in this industry for a long time. You see, I think I recently saw a stat that the number of viewers of linear TV has now been surpassed by the number of users on YouTube. which is a wild stat to see, but we've made that shift where YouTube is now bigger than linear TV. And things like that just excite me because it means so much in opportunity for your brands and the way that you buy media.
Yes, and the way people consume content, I
Right.
mean, I'm
It's
I'm
changing.
sure a lot of the people on this call have kids, and me
Right.
included, and I can say they are in front of the TV the least of all of, the different modes of content delivery. And
Yeah.
sometimes getting everyone to sit down and watch a movie is a Herculean effort. Oh,
That's great.
fantastic. Oh yeah, Paula, someone put a funny comment in the chat after our what are we excited about in 2025? Depends on who wins on Tuesday. Yes, that is definitely on top of mind for everybody. That'll throw
Fair
things,
point. Very fair
I'm
point.
sure.
I'm not
Yes.
taking the bait on that one.
Nope. Moving on. No, let's see. Another question came in. How early do you suggest engaging with a managed service provider to take on some potential work when we are in a pitch but not closed? Oh, I love that question.
That's a really good question.
Yes.
Let me jump in.
John,
All right,
jump
Todd.
in.
Yeah,
Go for it.
that's an awesome question, and I see this a lot where sometimes folks will wait, I think, a little bit too long to engage a managed service partner, as if we can't help in the planning phases of things. And I would say as soon as possible, we can even help you pitch that business. If you're going to your first initial pitch, your first meeting, it's as early as you are comfortable with. We are willing to engage and help you because we have a lot of tools at our disposal and our fingertips, whether it be some of the research tools that we subscribe to, where we can pull insane amounts of data in certain verticals, channels, competitive landscapes to help you in that pitch meeting, or just helping you with an advanced buying strategy or whatever it might be. So yeah, I would say the sooner the better.
Yeah, I'd add, I think on the sooner the better, I'd go as far as saying, it kind of goes something I mentioned earlier. Again, this is in the context of us working with existing agency partners, but even if it's a prospective opportunity, to talk about, look at the pipeline, right? Like have a pipeline discussion and understand, where are we at with the potential for, close one versus, hey, this is a pretty, long shot opportunity, as well as also assessing what you've pitched, let's just say over the last 6 to 12 months. And how have those pitches gone? Like, where have you felt like there's outages? Why did you win a pitch versus why did you lose a pitch? Did you get feedback? I think it's always an important thing, with respect to agencies pitching. Not always is it easy to get feedback if you perhaps didn't win or why you didn't advance. But if you can, that information is gold because now you're taking that information and those learnings and you're applying it for future pitches as well.
Absolutely. And certainly if some of the feedback is that there were certain outages, that's absolutely where a managed service provider can step in and help like a good way.
Exactly.
All right.
Great question.
Right.
That is a great question. Never too early is our answer.
Yes.
Okay.
No questions on multi-vector bidding though.
Oh, I guess that
Shocker.
didn't land, John.
I was so ready to answer them too,
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, okay. I think that's that's all the questions that we saw. I know that we have one final thing to share, which is I think we're gonna be okay, perfect. So we are happy to be able to offer a media audit, a free media audit, if you are so inclined. You can just scan the QR code here, and I think it'll prompt a quick page form fill. But that's something that we're offering all of the attendees on the webinar today. We are also going to follow up with a little media toolkit POV that we're going to share with all of the attendees that joined. We have your emails, so we're going to be able to send that proactively following this webinar. And that concludes what we had planned for today. I'd just like to say on behalf of Goodway and the three of us, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy workday to spend with us, especially on Halloween. I'm sure there's people are looking forward to the afternoon, or a lot of us are. So happy Halloween. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Happy Halloween.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.